Hey guys, this is Benny Johnson and welcome to your 6th iOS development tutorial. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about variables, how to use them and why they would be important. So let's go in and dive in. So variables are very important. You're going to see them pop up a lot in the programming world, and you're also going to be using them a hell of a lot in your programs. It may not seem apparent why you use them at the end of this tutorial, but once you start creating more complex applications, they will become very useful. So the basic definition is a variable is a placeholder for information. Now, if you can remember back to high school algebra where your teacher may say x equals 8, a equals 5, b equals 1, and you may have like a simple equation like x plus a minus b equals 12. Simple, right? Well, variables are just basically the same concept, except this time we're referring to values that they can be numbers, but they also can be other data, and so you're using variables in that way. So, you know, I've got x equals 8, a equals 5, and b equals 1. And this could be any pronumeral, or it could be equal to any value, and the variables are the same except we're holding different types of data in them. So that's basically what a variable is. So let's go have a look at what data you can actually store in variables. So we can store a whole number, which is called an int, and this can be 0 to 4 billion and something. You can also store characters, say for example the @ symbol, the Q, the E, the R letter, the numbers, anything you can really type on your keyboard and is a single character you can define as a chart. We also can declare decimals, which is called a float in Objective-C, and this can be anything from 1.5 times 10 to the negative 45 to 3.4 times 10 to the 38. So really big numbers. I'm sure if you inputted that in a calculator, you'd find a massive value. You can also store true or false value, which is called a bool, or this can refer to on or off. And you may be saying, why would you want to store a true or false value? Well, maybe you want to store whether your iPhone was portrait or as a landscape. So you'd say portrait equals true if the iPhone was in fact in portrait mode, and you'd say portrait equals false if it was in landscape mode. Simple, right? Well, let's go ahead and I'll give you guys a simple demonstration on using variables. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up Xcode. I'm gonna create a new project. I'm gonna create a single view application, and I'm gonna call it variables. It's gonna be an iPhone application, and it's gonna use storyboards and automatic reference counting. So click next. We're also going to create this in just my iOS projects on my desktop, and I'll just replace that because I've been working on it. Alright, so you guys should be fairly comfortable with this interface now. So I'm going to jump into my storyboard, and I'm going to go and drag a label in. So I'm going to snap it to that line, expand it across here, and I'll just leave it like that. In the attributes inspector, I'm going to give it 4 lines will do. And I think that's it for the label. So we've got our label, and if you can remember back to the previous tutorial where I talked about model view and controller. Now, I also said that we need to create and establish these connections between our view and controller. Now, this is the view, and our controller is this view controller code here. So what we need to do is to create an outlet to enable us to actually change the text displayed on our view. So the easiest way to do this is to go into the assistant editor, and before I do this, I'll just go ahead and explain this file here. So header files, if you can think of a product, they may list the number of features that it has, and this is basically what a header file is. It declares what features are going to be in the class, and your .m file is the actual instructions for the computer to use them. So remember, .h is the features of your class, where you declare what features it can do. Maybe it's touchscreen, maybe it can make a call, and etc. etc. The .m file is the actual instructions for the computer, telling them how to actually use those features. So just keep that in mind. So what we want to do is you want to click the label here, and you want to hold down Control and left click and drag it over and place it in between the interface and at end. Release it, and you want to create an outlet. It's going to be part of the view controller, and the name is going to be my label. It's going to be a UI label, and the storage is going to be weak. I'll go through storage in a later tutorial, just don't worry about it now. And basically it just generates some code for us. You can see that it is in fact an outlet. It's a UI label, and it's called my label. Right? Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit the assistant editor and go back to the standard editor. Then I'm going to go over to the instruction file, which is the implementation file, or viewcontroller.m, and you'll notice a few things are similar, but it's more complicated. So basically the first thing we've got here is comments, and you can create comments anywhere within your program. It just enables you as the developer to know what you're actually doing and write comments on what this code is and what it does, and etc, etc. So this import statement basically imports the features you declared in the header file. Don't worry about this at interface view controller for the moment. And this at implementation basically declares the start of the instructions. The at synthesize my label, we've created a property here, and it allows us to actually change the values of that property and also get the values of those properties. That's why we've got at synthesize there. And Xcode actually declared all this code for us, so it made the at synthesize label, and it also made this property here. And that's why I like to use the assistant editor, because it does it all for you. Alright, so the next thing you can notice is that we've got this dash void view did load, and void basically means that that function does not return a value. So when it's executed, it just does something. It doesn't return anything back. It doesn't give anything back to the program, or the computer doesn't give anything. So void just basically is, and it's called view did load. So whenever this is called from within the program, it's going to execute the code within these curly braces here. And that's basically what you have to remember. So it's going to execute super view did load. Don't worry about that, but basically remember that when this function is called, it's going to execute that, and because that's a void, it won't return a value, it will just do something. So what we want to do is actually change the text of our label when the program loads. So we're going to use this view did load, and this basically says is called when the view does load. So put an enter and put some space in between that and start writing our code. So the first thing we want to do is declare a variable, and the first thing your computer needs to know is what type of variable it is. You need to give it a name, and at some point you need to give it a value. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to declare an int variable, which is a whole number. It's going to be called year, and it's going to be equal to 2012. And then after that statement, put a semicolon, and this basically says to our computer that we've finished that statement, or we've finished that line. So just remember that you need those semicolons. I know a lot of people get tripped on it. Just remember, finish the line, semicolon. Alright, so once we declared our variable, we're going to use that variable. So what we're going to do is I'm going to refer to our outlet, which we created for our label, so my label. Then we're going to put .text, and this is basically similar to the way we use the attributes editor. If you click on this my label, it actually says the text property there, and we refer to that kind of the same way. We're referring to our outlet and the text of our label. So then we want to set it equal to something similar to variables. I'm going to put 2 square brackets in here, and I'm going to just type string, and you can see that this pop-up comes here, and this makes programming a lot streamlined. It just kind of predicts what you're going to type. So I'm going to make an string, And an NS string is an object or a class, and NS string, just remember that they store text. Then I'm gonna allocate, and I'm gonna put another square bracket, and I'm gonna initialize it with format. Alright, so I'll go through this. So basically, this declares an NS string object. Then it's saying to the computer, hey, I want to use an NS string. Please make some room in memory for that object. So basically, if you can think of a tank, it takes up space, but it doesn't do anything. So at that point, we just have the tank, right? We have enough room for NS string and the data within an NS string object. This int with format basically puts some stuff in that tank, and this is followed by whatever you put in here. So I'm going to delete that, and what you want to do is press at and double quotes. Basically the way you would declare a quote in Shakespeare or whatever, you'd put those double quotes if you're referring to someone. And basically just remember that the at and double quotes are needed for declaring some text. Next I'm going to write the world is going to end in. I'm going to put %i because we want to insert our variable in there. Then I'm going to put a comma and I'm going to type year. I'm going to finish off that statement. As you can see, we've actually got some brackets nested. So we've got this first bracket and we've got this second bracket, but this first bracket here actually just goes on forever. So we need to end that bracket. So just end it with another square bracket, and we want to put a semicolon to finish that statement off. So let's go ahead and run it, and I'll go through it. Alright, so the text says the world is going to end in 2012. Hopefully it doesn't end in 2012, but hey, it might happen. So basically what we've done here is we've declared a variable which is equal to 2012, and we're also referring to the text. So my label, which is our outlet to that actual label on the view, dot text, which is the attribute of the label we're referring to in the outlet. Then we're saying we want to use an NS string which allows us to store text. Give us some space to store that NS string. Then once you've actually gave a space, we want to create that actual string and fill up the tank. So basically we're saying at the world is going to end in. Then we've got this %i, and this %i means just include a variable inside here. So %i, then we've got comma year. So it basically says the world is going to end in year, and the year is equal to 2012. That's why we've got 2012 up on the iPhone display. So that's how we'd use the variables, and let's go into a more complicated example. So I'm going to create some other variables here. They're going to be ints, and I'm going to say month equal to 12, and I'm going to say int day equal to 23. Alright, so you can notice that we've actually got these warnings here, and this is basically saying you're declaring a variable but you're not using it. Why would you want to declare a variable if you're not going to use it? I mean, you're just wasting space. So that's basically what the warnings are going to say. Alright, so we want to change the label text, so I'm going to change some things here. I'm going to say on, then I'm going to say %i slash %i slash %i, and we're going to print our date out here, and you should be able to notice what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to delete this here just to make it simpler. So we've got comma, I'm going to put day, comma, month, comma, year. Right, so whatever comes first in here goes to the first variable here. whatever comes second goes to second, and whatever comes third goes to the third here. So basically it says the world is going to end on the day slash the month slash the year, and whatever values that equals, that puts it in. So let's go ahead and run that now. And you can see that it hasn't completed at all, so I'm just going to change that. So I'm going to go back to my storyboard and just make it a little bit bigger and then run that. And it says the world is going to end on the 23rd of the 12th, 2012. Basically, so as you can see in this view controller .m file, it just says set my label equal to a new and a string, allocate some space to me, and then create the string with a format, which is the world is going to end on the integer here slash integer here slash integer here, and we declare those integers in there. So it's day, which is equal to 23rd, which is corresponding to what is on the screen, month equal to 12, and that's on the screen, and year, which is equal to 2012, and that prints it on the screen. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial on how to use variables and why would we want to use them, and I'll see you guys later. Just remember to subscribe.